The morning sun shone against the glass walls of the Chase Tower in downtown Chicago as Mary arrived early, her heart a mix of hope and nerves. She had spent several weeks preparing for this meeting, going over every part of her presentation until she could recite it by heart, practicing every possible question and answer in front of her small bedroom mirror. She believed, with a restless certainty, that this moment could change the course of her life. Settling quietly in the lobby, Mary felt the pressure of her own ambition bearing down on her shoulders. Everything around her seemed to sparkle. There was the faint lemony scent of cleaning supplies in the air, blending with expensive cologne wafting from some unseen executive passing by. The space was modern yet quiet, with just the sound of polished shoes clicking across the marble floor. Mary glanced around at the sleek chairs and tall plants, wishing her family could see her sitting there, dressed in her best suit. Even though no one else seemed nervous, she could sense an invisible current of tension running through the place, as if every surface was silently testing whether she would rise to the occasion before she even stepped into the interview room. As soon as she reached the reception desk, Mary introduced herself. The woman behind the counter greeted her with a polite but distant smile, quickly glancing at her appointment details before assuring her that Mr. Smith would be with her shortly. Mary thanked her, picked up her bag, and found a seat near the large window that overlooked Michigan Avenue. She straightened her blazer, folded her hands on her lap, and tried to look calm and confident, but beneath her careful posture, every minute that passed made her more restless. The digital clock on the wall seemed to move impossibly slowly. 5 minutes turned into 10, and soon almost 30 had passed. As the silence dragged on, Mary's thoughts became tangled with doubt. She wondered if she was simply being too anxious, if maybe this was just how things worked in huge companies like Chase. Big places probably ran on their own kind of schedule, she told herself, but the voice in her head kept whispering other things. Was she waiting longer than she should be? Was she already being overlooked before she had even started? The uneasy feeling started to knot up in her stomach, quiet but persistent, making her question if she really belonged there at all. As she waited, Mary tried to distract herself by watching everything happening around her. She noticed people arriving in tailored suits and smart dresses, some chatting easily with the security guards, others flashing passes or greeting the receptionist by name. Almost everyone seemed to be expected. They were greeted warmly and whisked away in minutes. A few visitors even received coffee while they waited, but nobody offered her anything. Mary tried not to let it bother her, but with every new group that was greeted and led inside, she felt more like she was fading into the background. She shifted in her chair, her gaze following a young man who had arrived well after her, but was promptly called back, smiling and nodding as he disappeared down the hallway. The more this happened, the more restless she grew. She told herself there were probably explanations. Maybe people had earlier appointments, maybe there were unexpected delays, but the repeated pattern gnawed at her. It was hard not to wonder if she was being overlooked for a reason she could not put into words. The thought kept coming back, uninvited, and no matter how much she tried to find logical excuses, she could not shake off the question. Was this just bad luck, or was there something deeper she was not seeing? Time seemed to stretch out endlessly, making every second feel heavier than the last. Mary shifted in her seat, her back growing stiff as she sat upright, refusing to slouch or look discouraged. She kept her expression calm, determined not to let any insecurity show, even though she could sense glances sliding right past her, as if people were purposefully avoiding meeting her eyes. Every once in a while, she would glance at the receptionist, but the woman never returned her look. She only seemed to focus on her computer screen or on greeting the next guest. As the minutes ticked by, the feeling of being shut out grew stronger. It was like an invisible wall had gone up around her, separating her from the swirl of activity in the lobby. Sounds faded in and out. A phone ringing, footsteps echoing on the marble. But mostly there was a thick, heavy silence collecting around Mary. She felt like her presence was being erased in this space that was supposed to be about possibilities and beginnings. With each group that moved past, the distance between her and everyone else grew, but she told herself to stay steady, to keep waiting with her dignity intact, no matter how isolated or insignificant she might feel at that moment. Amid all that waiting, Mary's gaze drifted to a janitor pushing a cart along the far side of the lobby. The man was older, wearing a Navy uniform and moving with a kind of patience Mary recognized right away. For a moment, their eyes met. His expression was calm, maybe a little tired, but also kind, as if he understood exactly what it felt like to be in her position, quiet, overlooked, and waiting for something you could not really control. That simple look broke through the feeling of being completely alone. Mary felt a small sense of comfort, just knowing that at least one other person saw her. There was nothing dramatic about it. No words, just genuine recognition from someone who probably knew a lot about being ignored himself. It was such a quick exchange, yet it reminded her that her presence did matter, at least to someone else who understood the weight of waiting. The strength of that one little moment gave Mary another burst of resolve. She took a deep breath, sitting just a bit taller, holding on to every bit of self-respect she had left. No matter how indifferent the rest of the building seemed, she would not let that coldness steal her confidence or sense of worth. Then, there was a sudden ripple of excitement at the front of the lobby. Mary watched as the receptionist straightened up, her tired smile shifting instantly to something brighter. A woman strode in, carrying herself with a confidence that filled the entire space. Mary recognized her right away from the news, a senior executive at Chase, someone whose name meant power in these circles. Staff was quick to step forward, offering warm greetings and instantly clearing the way for her pass, their voices louder and more eager than before. It was impossible not to notice how much things changed all at once. The executive's presence lit up the room, and for a moment, Mary felt almost invisible in comparison. People who had barely glanced her way earlier now focused all of their attention on this newcomer. The difference in how everyone was treated could not have been more obvious, and it hit Mary hard, making the air around her feel heavier. Still, she would not let herself get rattled. Mary smoothed her blazer, pretending to check something important on her phone, even though her mind kept circling back to how easily she could fade into the background. She reminded herself that strength was sometimes quiet, and that, even if she felt out of place, she had every right to be there, waiting for her chance. After nearly 2 hours, all of Mary's careful effort to maintain her calm began to show cracks. Her back ached from a stiff seat, and every seam of her business suit felt tighter than before. The nerves in her legs tingled, and she struggled not to fidget or let her tiredness show. More than her physical discomfort, though, it was the constant dismissal that wore her down. Every time another visitor got called up or a staff member darted around her without a word, it felt like another weight pushing her further down her chair. She glanced at her phone again, watching the minutes slip away, her stomach clenching as she realized how much of her day had been swallowed by all this waiting. For a brief moment, she considered just standing up and walking out, escaping the thick air of indifference that had settled around her. But with each doubt, she forced herself to hold on. This interview was important. The work and worry leading up to this day were not just for show. She had promised herself she would see it through, no matter what. With a slow breath, Mary straightened her blazer one more time, unwilling to let unfair circumstances take away her hope. The lobby kept buzzing with life all around Mary, almost as if she were invisible to the crowd moving past. She watched people coming and going, their voices rising with laughter and bits of small talk, hands waving in greeting as colleagues and clients recognized each other. It was like being stuck behind a glass wall, close enough to hear everything but still left out of it all. Nothing about her situation seemed to affect anyone else. The receptionist, who had barely looked her way for the past 2 hours, kept sending tight, polite smiles that felt less sincere with every passing minute. People made decisions, sealed deals, laughed too loud, and Mary sat there, hardly shifting in her seat, caught somewhere between wanting to hang on her hope for a chance and feeling an ache of frustration at how long she had been overlooked. The world spun on around her, seemingly unaware that she was part of it at all. After a while, Mary started to feel less like a person and more like just another part of the room. The forgotten plant in the corner or a scratch side table nobody bothered to clean. She fought the urge to disappear, reminding herself, quietly and firmly, that her purpose there still mattered. At last, Mary spotted Andrew, the man she was supposed to meet, hurrying through the lobby with a stack of folders under his arm. Instantly, a spark of hope flared up inside her. She sat up straighter and stepped a little forward, hoping to catch his attention. But Andrew's eyes swept right past her, focused on someone at the front desk, and he didn't even slow down as he moved toward the elevators. Even though she was just a few feet away, it was like she was invisible. Nothing more than another face in the crowd or a piece of office furniture blending in with the background. That one cold moment stung Mary in a way all the hours of waiting had not. She could feel a kind of tired disbelief settling in. It was as if all the energy and hope that had kept her steady was finally running out. For a few seconds, she seriously considered picking up her bag and leaving for good, just to put an end to the feeling of being constantly passed over. But as she watched Andrew disappear into the elevator, something deep down told her not to give up just yet. She reminded herself there was still a reason she had come and that it was not time to leave. Suddenly, a small crowd of senior executives entered the Chase headquarters lobby, and everything around Mary shifted. The hum of casual talk faded, and all eyes seemed to zero in on the new arrivals. Staff hurried to greet them, voices dropping to careful tones of respect. With just their presence, it felt like someone had clicked on a spotlight, washing the lobby in a different energy. Compared to the hours Mary had spent being overlooked, the reaction to the executives was overwhelming. Where she had been invisible, they commanded the entire room without a word. At the center of the group were two names Mary recognized from countless company news stories, Sandra and Lucas. Both had reputations for knowing everyone and everything going on in those halls. Mary watched as her gaze unintentionally connected with Lucas's. She braced herself for another moment of being looked through, expecting nothing more than a polite, distant acknowledgement. Instead, Lucas's eyes brightened just a bit in recognition. Without looking away, he nudged Sandra and said something quickly. Mary's nerves jolted. After the entire morning of feeling out of place, someone important had finally seen her. The tension that settled in her chest started to loosen, giving the day an unexpected, overdue twist. Lucas's voice rang out across the lobby, steady and clear as he called Mary's name. The effect was instant. Every conversation paused, and people turned to look, curiosity on their faces. For the first time that morning, Mary felt truly seen, not just as a person waiting in a chair, but as someone who actually mattered. Lucas walked over, hand outstretched, and greeted her warmly, making it clear to everyone around that she was not out of place here at all. A wave of recognition washed through the crowd, staff and guests alike suddenly aware of her presence. Andrew, who had reappeared on the far side of the lobby, froze mid-step when he spotted what was happening. The look on his face was unmistakable, surprise mixed with an awkward realization that he had overlooked someone important. For a moment, the entire lobby held its breath, watching this silent shift in the air. It was an odd feeling for Mary, who just an hour before had been almost ready to leave. Now, with everyone's eyes on her and respect coloring their interactions, she felt the balance of power settle firmly in her corner. The uncomfortable quiet around Andrew underscored just how suddenly things had changed. And for once, Mary stood in the center of it all. Mary walked toward the group with more confidence than she felt before, her shoulders back and her steps steady. Lucas and Sandra greeted her with genuine smiles, shaking her hand and making it clear to everyone watching that she belonged there. They mentioned her recent project and praised her dedication in front of the others, and Mary couldn't help but feel relief as some of the sting from being ignored slowly faded away. It felt good to be recognized after so much time spent hiding in plain sight, and the warmth in their voices acted like a quiet reassurance that her hard work had not gone unnoticed. Meanwhile, Andrew shuffled awkwardly at the edge of the group, trying to explain himself to Lucas and Sandra as they asked why Mary had been left waiting so long. His words stumbled over each other, but neither executive seemed much interested in excuses. The rest of the staff pretended to go back to work, but more than a few side glances buzzed through the lobby. Mary could see Andrew's uneasiness, but she chose not to twist the knife. Holding her head high, she answered questions with calm and clarity, focusing on what mattered and letting go of the bitterness she could have shown. A moment later, Lucas turned to Mary and invited her to join the senior team as they walked towards the main executive conference room. There was no hesitation or second thought, just open acceptance. Mary nodded, returning a small but genuine smile, feeling the difference in how she was being treated. She glanced around and noticed that the barrier she had felt earlier was finally gone. Now, as she walked alongside Lucas and Sandra, the space beyond the lobby did not seem so intimidating. It almost felt familiar. Andrew, still wanting to make up for what had happened, hovered close and kept offering to help or apologizing under his breath. Each time, though, everyone seemed to brush him off, focusing instead on Mary's ideas or joking with her about the long morning. As the group made their way through glass-walled hallways, Mary no longer felt like a stranger looking in. She listened to Sandra and Lucas discuss projects, and when they asked for her input, she answered without missing a beat. The uncertainty and unease that had weighed her down all morning slipped away, left behind with the tense air of the lobby. Surrounded by real support and respect, she finally felt like she belonged. As soon as Mary stepped into the executive conference room, she felt the shift in energy. The tension of the lobby disappeared, replaced by a sense of real teamwork. The room itself was spacious, filled with sunlight coming through tall windows, but it was the people that made the difference. When she spoke, every executive at the table listened carefully, not just out of politeness, but because they truly wanted to hear what she had to say. Lucas asked thoughtful questions, and Sandra nodded along, scribbling notes as Mary shared her thoughts. Soon, Mary realized this was much more than a simple interview. The executives started talking about a new leadership project at Chase, explaining that they were searching for someone with fresh ideas and a strong presence. It became clear that they saw something in her and wanted her to be a big part of this initiative. The conversation turned toward possible strategies and even touched on long-term goals for the entire company. Mary listened, feeling a mix of excitement and responsibility as the discussion unfolded. By the end of the meeting, there was no doubt about it. They believed in her abilities, and the opportunity they offered was far bigger than she had dared to expect when she first walked through the front doors that morning. Throughout the meeting, Mary spoke up with curiosity and confidence, asking direct questions about the leadership project and the challenges facing Chase. Her comments showed that she had really done her homework, and she brought up ideas no one else had considered yet. Whenever she offered a new suggestion, the executives leaned in and asked follow-up questions, treating her input as necessary rather than optional. Each time she finished making a point, someone nodded in agreement or added to her thought, making her feel like a true part of the conversation. For the first time all day, Mary felt her words had real influence. She could see her impact right there in the room, and it made her sit a bit taller, her nerves fading with every minute that passed. This time, it was clear that she was not being patronized or just tolerated. She was being counted on. Back in the hallway, Andrew stood behind the glass, watching the meeting play out. He fidgeted with his phone and shifted from foot to foot, regret plain on his face. The respect Mary now received from the executives looked so different from the way she had been treated earlier. Andrew could not help but recognize just how badly he had misjudged her. As the meeting wrapped up, Sandra looked Mary straight in the eyes and said that she wanted her to take the lead on the new project at Chase. It was not just a polite offer, and everyone in the room could hear the conviction in Sandra's voice. This was a big deal. It meant that they trusted Mary's judgment and believed she was the right person to set the direction and bring a fresh perspective. The weight of that invitation landed on Mary all at once, a mix of nerves and excitement, but mostly pride in how far she had come in just a single day. Lucas chimed in next, making it clear he would be there to support her in any challenge that might come up. He said his door was always open, and if she needed a sounding board or a teammate, she could count on him. That vote of confidence meant everything to Mary. and she realized the feeling of isolation she'd carried for months was finally fading away. For the first time since she started hoping for bigger things at Chase, she saw a clear path forward. With Sandra and Lucas backing her up, Mary felt ready to face whatever obstacles this new role might bring. The following week, an email popped into Mary's inbox that made her heart race. It was the official announcement from Chase's leadership team. She had been chosen to head up the new initiative, and with it came a well-earned promotion and more independence in her work. There was no more questioning if she belonged. Her new title and responsibilities proved to everyone, including herself, that her work spoke for itself. Now she could focus on creating something real and lasting, not just showing she deserved a place at the table. The vibe around her changed too. Co-workers dropped by her desk with congratulations, and a few even asked her advice. Mary found herself smiling more often and looking forward to each new day, thinking less about old doubts and more about the future she could help shape. On the other hand, things were not going so well for Andrew. Word got around about how he had handled things that morning with Mary. Pretty soon, folks started whispering as he walked by, and a few teammates exchanged uneasy glances in his direction. It was clear that Chase expected more from its managers, and the higher-ups had noticed his mistakes. The company hallways felt colder for Andrew, with support slowly slipping away. Before long, Andrew got called into a private meeting with the leadership at Chase. It was not just about what happened with Mary that morning. There were other complaints and a pattern of dismissive behavior that had been quietly piling up over time. This time, the higher-ups made it clear they were serious about changing the company culture and would not look the other way. They spoke directly and made their expectations known. After that meeting, Andrew was told to clean out his desk. He left the building without fanfare, carrying a cardboard box with the small things from his office. People noticed his quiet departure, exchanging a few surprised glances, but nobody gathered to gossip. It was more of a thoughtful moment, a sense that something was finally shifting inside the company. Mary saw Andrew leaving as she passed through the hallway later that day. She did not feel like celebrating. It was not about revenge or justice for her, just a necessary step for Chase to become a better place. Instead, she kept her focus on her new role. She was determined to use her position to make sure that nobody else would have to fight as hard as she had just to be heard and respected at work. At her very first major meeting as project leader, Mary stood in front of the gathered team and took a breath before she started speaking. She looked around at the faces, some new, some familiar, and told everyone straight out that good ideas do not come with a label. It does not matter where you are from, what you look like, or whether you have held a certain position before. She said that here at Chase, what truly counted from now on was thoughtfulness, creativity, and the willingness to help each other move forward. Her message was simple but powerful, and as she spoke, people around the room sat up a little straighter and glanced at each other with cautious hope. Her words did not just set the tone for the meeting. They lit a spark of inspiration among the whole team. For the first time, some of the quieter employees volunteered their suggestions. Even longtime staff stopped to consider viewpoints that might have been brushed off before. Mary could tell the respect she was earning was not just for her own journey. It was bigger than that. She was helping to open doors for others who had once been pushed aside or overlooked, and she knew that together they could make real changes. Sitting at the head of the long conference table, Mary felt both the excitement and the real weight of her new role settle in. She glanced at the paper spread in front of her and then at the team gathered around, realizing just how far she had come since her first days at Chase. The responsibility was more than a title or the bigger office. It was about making sure nobody in the room would ever be ignored or overlooked just because they did not fit someone else's expectations. Quietly but firmly, Mary promised herself that she would protect that idea no matter how challenging things became. Every day, Mary leaned into her belief that everyone's voice mattered, even when it meant standing up to old habits or making changes that felt uncomfortable at first. She encouraged her colleagues to speak out, listen to new ideas, and made time for those who rarely got the spotlight. Over time, word of her approach spread throughout Chase. People from other departments started reaching out to ask for advice or simply to say how Mary's journey motivated them. Her story became an example within the company, showing that with patience, respect, and a willingness to keep pushing forward, it really was possible to change not just one person's career, but the entire workplace culture.